Everybody, and welcome to Indie Game Business. It is just myself and Pebs, our wonderful community manager, running everything on the back end today because Dan is dodging lightning storms down in Florida. So we're hoping everything's fine down there, but he's just dealing with a bunch of storms. So today we've got Chris Byatte, longtime industry veteran and currently running Splace, and we're going to be talking about bringing the fun back into game development. So, Chris, welcome to the show, and let's start with tell us how you originally got in the industry and walk us through your decades-long career to where you got now.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Jay. So, where do I start? I guess if I rewind all the way back, I've always been interested in games. I guess without knowing it, my journey started with home computers, so the 8-bits like the ZX81, the Sinclair Spectrum, if you remember the Amiga A500. It was a time when really, things like Tron and ET first hit the screens, so very early 80s. And that really seems like a golden period. And I think right now there's a huge amount of nostalgia for that kind of world. So I'd be busy, dreaming of really making my own games and spending most of my money down at the arcades, soaking up the latest titles like Gorf, Battlezone, Galaxian, etc. And I would create my own, in a way, pixel characters of computer graphics on graph paper, bringing to life all kinds of crazy ideas. I used to tell everyone that I was going to make a game. And of course, at that time I was only 12 years old, and people thought, quite right, are you crazy? What are you talking about? But I guess, things take a while to gestate and for the universe to coordinate things. And, fast forward to 2002, that's really when my gaming career started. And so with my co-founder, Joe Wee, we decided to start our own company called Click Gamer to develop really our first game. So we were an indie developer back then in 2002. And this was a simple match 3 puzzler. It was a time when Palm Pilot was huge. Games like Bejeweled were being launched. Very, you could say naively, we assumed that we'd make $1 million that year. And of course, it just simply wasn't that easy. So we made a second game, but still it was linear progress. We needed something more. And that's really when we hit upon the idea, why don't we just sell other people's games? We knew how to make them, but it wasn't really making enough money. We'd not really got the secret formula yet for that hit game. So I started building really what was a sort of iTunes Connect, but for any make and model of phone. And this was a full self-service system on the web for developers. I think around 2004, 2005, we launched it. So developers, they could sign up, they could sign the contract, they could upload their own content, their own binaries, and specify what game works for what phone. And from that point, genuinely the hockey stick growth started to appear, and each day new developers would sign up and they would add new handsets and upload their binaries, and things really happened quite quickly. And I can say from experience, selling those early games where games were really full price, so $14.95 was a normal price for a game. So customers would come to our site, they would buy the game, they would sideload it via USB into their device. So these were really early adopters, the early days of gaming, so to speak. So fast forward to 2007, Steve Jobs was announcing the iPhone, and we knew that this was a holy grail, at last something that was revolutionary. It didn't just have a bunch of keys, you could dial a number, the whole screens could be used, and we knew this was something special. And so with the Apple SDK on the horizon, we decided to really pivot everything and rename the company to be Chilingo, which really turned into probably the first iPhone publisher. So it's really what we did. We called our best developers, and we asked them to, could they port their games to iPhone? And we offered to publish it in exchange for a minimum guarantee, an MG. And this really was the start of a gold rush. We already had the intel of which games were selling the most from our relationships with these developers. The developers trusted us, and we'd been cutting checks to them each month for several years. I think at that time we had maybe 600, 700 developers on our books, And most of them I never even met. So, this is a long time ago, but this is genuinely what happened. So I spent the next few weeks reaching out to developers. I think I slept in the office pretty much for days on end, talking to them on the phone, wherever they were. We decided to fly out to events like GDC in San Francisco. We had so many meetings. So we were busy really, concentrating all of our efforts onto iPhone and really publishing those games. And in the end, we had something like 12 or 13 #1 hits. Those included Angry Birds, Cut the Rope, and that's when Electronic Arts decided to acquire us. So yeah, in a nutshell, there's a lot more detail, but that's a condensed history of how I got here.
So tell us what you're doing now, because you've moved a little bit away from games directly.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, sorry, Ash, I overrode you there. You've moved a little bit away from games directly, but now you're working on Splace. So tell us a little bit about what that is and how it factors in and what you're doing there.
Okay. So yes, we've been working on Splace. As you can see, the logo's behind me. So what is Splace? It's a social network for gamers. Okay, so think of a mashup between, say, Discord, Reddit, Twitter, and of all things, Google Maps. Now, why did we choose those things? Well, Discord, it's good for organizing things. So we took the element for the spaces. You can quickly jump in and out of spaces, out of topics, etc. Really, Discord called it servers. Reddit, it's got the concept of posts, and that works well, but not so much chat. That's what Discord is big for. Twitter, so we took the element of having a feed that everyone knows, but I want to be clear, it's in no way driven by algorithms, by AI. So on Splace, there's no echo chambers. So when you join Splace, if you follow a public space or if you follow someone, you get all of those posts mixed up in your feed. So really, you just see exactly what you want, and you can leave any space anytime you want to, and that's basically your feed reconfigures itself. So you just get what you ask for. It's not a circular echo chamber, as I was saying before. So why Google Maps? Well, really, because we had this idea to essentially geolocate any post or any media, either onto the real world or onto a gaming world. So there might be a space for, say, Formula One. And of course, you can see all the posts all over the world, so geolocated. You can see that inside the platform. Or there might be a space for a famous game, say, community space for Elden Ring or Fortnite or any other kind of game, any indie game. Now, this is really well suited for a persistent world gaming map, because then users can geolocate their post exactly at the position that it happens. So I think that's something that's really unique within Splace. So effectively, from the ground up, you might call this crazy, we try to imagine what would make the ultimate social platform if we started again. So we're bringing in lots of cool features. But in a nutshell, that's what Splace does.
All right, but this also integrates into games as well. Because I know when you and I talked several weeks ago, that was like one of the first things. I was like, oh my God, I can put notes in like a Skyrim map or something. So explain a little bit about how that goes from just real world geolocation to games.
Yeah, so we've taken, essentially, if you look online, like IGN guys, there are thousands and thousands of blog posts that talk about game guides, how to defeat a boss, how to progress, how to discover something, how to level up, where to find the next treasure or the dragon or whatever. We're taking those same game tile set maps and allowing users with full attribution to the developer / publisher. We're allowing users to geolocate any post onto these game tile maps. Now, in future, we can talk about this in a while if you wish. We're building a Splace SDK that allows deep integration. So a developer that has built their game on Unreal or Unity can easily create augmented maps where there's real-time data from their game appearing on top of their maps within Splace. So you could have a glance and realize that I'm on the bus, I'm going home, but I can see my guild, my friends in real time. I can see what they're doing within a gaming world. So that's our ultimate vision for Splace is having this SDK, and that's something that we're working upon. So that's what I call deep integration.
All right. So the big question, as always, how do things like this help indie games in particular? And is it something that is going to apply more to mobile or console or PC? But the big thing is, how does this help indie? What is the big perk for indie teams?
Okay, well, we found because again, we were an indie developer, we turned into effectively an indie publisher that really blew up. And then we were talking to hundreds, if not thousands, of indie studios. So really, day on day, my job would be filtering through content, deciding what to publish, and having hundreds of games of tennis, multiple conversations in terms of like with indies, separate indies, polishing their games, trying to help them to edge their games forwards. So that's what I did all the time. And basically, to answer your question, once a game was signed, is how do we make it successful? And really, the secret sauce to making a game successful is harnessing a community. So really, with Splace, we've created something that we always wanted back in our days of Chilingo, whereby how can we harness community? How can we create one single destination where we could post all the game updates, we could gather feedback from users, we can chat, we can do everything we want to do, and harness it inside one space. And really, that we almost, in a way, I sort of built it for ourselves, but I'm pretty sure it will apply to any indie developer, publisher, game studio, game service company, etc. I mean, see it as like a community in a box. So a developer can set up a public space for their game or studio. They can just go to splace.world and create it now. So they can have a fully brandable gaming space that once it's live, and it can be live within 24 hours, they can have their own structure, their own graphics. They can have about us, game features, trailers. They can post into there, and then let the community engage with it. So it's almost, I have this vision of, I don't think gamers have a true spiritual home. It's very fragmented across many platforms. So I'm trying to unify that under one destination, one almost town hall. At a glance, you can see what's going on and where it's going on inside your game.
So bouncing back to Chilingo really quick.
Yes.
Or maybe not really quick. We're going to find out in a second. But
okay,
you are, I mean, you're humble about it, but you are one of the forerunners here of mobile game publishing. I mean, Chilingo was a force to be reckoned with back in the day. I mean, I remember because we would be submitting our clients titles over there to see if they were
wow,
interested.
great. Thank you. I didn't realize that. Thank you, Jay.
So over the years, how have you seen mobile publishing change from, back in the mid 2000s up to where we are? Because I didn't realize it until you mentioned it, but yeah, we're looking at like 20 years of mobile games now. How have you seen that market change?
Okay, so if I rewind time, genuinely, I would say that we were dealing with very small studios that were comprised of maybe just one person. And that one person might have an amazing physics engine, but actually the rest of the game, the way it looked, the level design, there was nothing to it. No music, no sound effects, no UI, no tutorial. And so in those early days, it was truly indie. And really, it wasn't just back bedroom developers. We had small studios too, but as you move the clock forward through the years, that turned into bigger studios. And those single developers, if they didn't get a hit, they had to join forces with the bigger studios and work for them. So there are many larger studios across the world. So you sort of see this consolidation, and then working up the chain, the pyramid. I mean, now games are really the successful games are usually a service. They run as a service. They have a lot of teams. It's like an iceberg. You just see the game, but underneath there's a huge analytics dashboard and a whole cloud infrastructure that's delivering modifications to the game in real time, A/B testing, split testing, cohorts. People talk about data engineers was never really a thing, but now it is. Looking at DAUs, MAUs, it's all about the data. You could say, okay, it's taking the fun out of the game, and that's really what I'm about. I'm a little bit against it because I think you can take it to the nth degree. But at the same time, it does have its place. It doesn't mean that the game is bad. But what my heart lies in the true indie situation of, one or two people, small studios trying to get a game out. That's where my passion lies, because they don't have access to all this stuff. So I'm hoping that Splace will fit in with that. And I think there's also a role for, we don't want a world that's just freemium. Most people are quite happy to pay, for a good game that's been made with dedication and brilliance. I'm quite prepared to pay $5, $10, without any kind of nag screens, without any kind of upgrades. And I think actually that there's a wave of those games coming back into the App Store, which I think is a great thing. But to answer your question precisely, over time there's been massive consolidation. It's moved towards the bigger studios, large corporations, and data. That is the sad truth of it.
So, I mean, do you think there is a spot for indie teams in mobile these days?
Without doubt, because a big corporation can never compete against the creativity of the world, put it that way, because creativity is there for everyone, and some people are hyper creative. All it takes is one amazing coder to create a physics engine, one amazing artist to make an amazing looking UI and skin. And then you find that these teams, this is where I get really excited, these teams, if they can find each other, they can consolidate. You've got this amazing coder with this amazing artist and a musician, and those three people alone can make, the next contre-jour, the next cut the rope, etc. Cut the rope started out just two brothers in a bedroom. That's how it started. So, amazing things are possible, but it's about bringing the talent together.
And something I saw just yesterday, and it's not like this is new, but it's good that I'm seeing it pick up momentum. So there's a game coming out called Moonstone Island. Our friends over at Raw Fury are publishing it. But they had a note on whatever little ad I saw that they've done a collaboration with Terraria. And so they're going to have characters going back and forth. And so we've seen a couple of those. There's some fighting games that do that as well. But I mean, that gets back into your collaboration thing. It doesn't necessarily always have to be everybody on the same studio. It's about working together with other studios to try to boost that stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. We did have a few games back in 2009 where they were cross-pollinating the characters just in the same way that you're talking about. And obviously that's a very long time ago. But you know what? That went down really well with the audience because people are, surprised and pleased that this kind of collaboration is happening. So I think what's really great in the indie community and actually in your organization, the whole indie games business, is that people are prepared to be to competitively collaborate, which I think is really healthy. It's, people are prepared to help each other, but at the same time, they're striving obviously for a hit themselves because it's all about persistence. If you don't make money, you could go under, and that's completely reasonable. But there's such an amazing sense of goodwill still in the indie community, and it's really nice to be back in touch with that.
I mean, that's been my concern for several years, that because, mobile games in general have turned basically into spreadsheet factories. And I remember the first time I was at GDC and I asked somebody what they did, and he goes, "I'm a data scientist." And I went, "You're a what? Is that a thing now?" But, the concern is that they just get overwhelmed by so much of these analytics platforms and all of this other stuff, because we have those companies come to us on the consulting side and say, "Hey, can you help us reach these developers?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely can. But unless you teach these developers what they're going to use this for and how to do it, it's not going to do you a bit of good." And so it's good that, you're seeing a bit of that indie game. And I'm with you. I am totally up for paying flat out on a mobile game if it's good. It's good to see that that's starting to get a bit of a resurgence, because it's the more platforms you can work on, the more money you can potentially make.
Exactly.
So when we're looking at the mobile space in general, and now of course, you're looking at, PC and console too with Splace, what are some of the ways that you see teams can effectively bring together all these platforms and create one community for all of it instead of having everything splintered like it traditionally has
To be clear, can I reference Splace again, or is it out of bounds?
You're fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, I mean, exactly as I said before, there's huge fragmentation in terms of like streamings on Twitch, etc., and posts and comments everywhere else. So really, what we're trying to do is, I'm not in any way like getting ahead of myself, trying to say, look, Splace is going to compete with Discord and replace it. No, I'm not. Currently, we don't have chat, but we can easily add that in future if the community wants it. But what I do see Splace as doing is being like a unified hub to number one, to create organization. So, there's massive fragmentation on Reddit. We've talked about that. Whereas on Splace, you could add, if you were, say, creating a Formula One game, you could add a place for racing drivers, another one for venues, another one for engines, and it all lives within your space, which again is fully brandable. So it has a great look and feel. So I think as a user, you're not scared away by technical terms like setting up a server or creating a Discord this or whatever. It's really accessible terms that we're using, and the whole UI look and feel is bright, is cheerful. It looks fantastic. So I think that alone makes it a special destination, and it's quite easy for people to, if they have a YouTube video or a post on Reddit, they can easily put that inside Splace. So you can click it, you can jump out to a window, you can read it, you can close it again. So again, it's having like a unified town hall, like a hub, an initial destination to land on, to go, what's happening inside my gaming world today? And it feels natural, it feels comfortable, and we're avoiding all that kind of toxic stuff that's happening in social media these days. We've all read about it, and I think people are tired of it. They want to go back to the glory days of, well, a lot of people do, of like MySpace, which is really, talked about it before, like a golden age of social media.
MIDI music and unicorns. That's all. That's my memory from MySpace. Yes,
that's it.
Everybody had cute little cat graphics and their favorite song playing in the background. So the toxicity is an issue, and we see this, and this is why centralized things. And I think that's part of the reason, like things like Linktree are so, because you can get it all together. We're seeing Twitter implode, slowly, but still imploding. And now Reddit's facing a lot of the very same issues with the war between the moderators and the CEO that's ongoing. How can developers in general, do they just need to go and be on all these platforms? Because if you go in and you invest a ton of time and a ton of money into building a presence on Twitter or building one on Reddit, and then something happens and all that stuff implodes, how do you deal with that as a small company?
Yeah, there is that, and of course, resources, as you say, are tight in small teams, so you need to pick your battles. But if I was setting up a gaming company now and I had a new gaming release, then number one, I would immediately create a Twitter profile for sure, because it's a huge audience. Yes, you might get some, toxic posts, etc. But overall, you're probably, if you're going to grow it right and post some meaningful stuff, you're going to get some great interaction and you're going to get some great discovery as well. Reddit, it's definitely, it's a harsher environment, but some people want to join in there. So, a lot of it, what we did before was, engaging with influencers, and obviously they exist across the whole spectrum of platforms. And if you really want to get in with a gaming editor, an influencer with a reach of 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 or more, then invariably you have to make inroads into these platforms. So I would say, to answer your question, it's pretty much unavoidable. I'm just trying, look, try this new platform. Yes, it's early days, but there's so many incentives that we can bring, so much new stuff that hasn't been seen before. So, again, I'm not getting ahead of myself, but I think there's something unique here.
So when you talk about bringing the fun back into all of this, talk about how you're doing that and what that's actually going to mean for these studios.
Yes. So, again, a lot of the platforms, and I think Discord is perhaps one of them, it's a little bit techy. I know you guys are fluent in it, and I know that give it a couple of hours. Yeah, okay, it makes sense. But a lot of people are scared off by it, and there are a lot of gamers that are not in the sort of Gen Z bracket anymore. They've grown up. They're 45, they're 55, they're 65, etc. People are playing these games because they were there in the 1970s, 1980s. So we're trying to make something accessible, fun. Bringing the fun back, and also having a huge dose of high visibility, brandable graphics. So if you create a profile on Splace, you can have a very cool, rich user profile. So you can have your header, you can break down all your places. So okay, I like Elden Ring, I love running, I love cooking, or whatever your interests are. I love cosplay. You can break all these down. You can post into all these places, and all of them have their own look and feel. So again, we're trying to bring the fun back that was from the MySpace days in order to create something new and innovative that is actually genuinely fun to use. And it's not bogged down by the same old bios, which happens on all platforms, which are just tired, to be honest. They're just not very inventive.
I feel so old in the fact that now we're looking at MySpace and going, we're going to bring back, the fun that was in that platform. And I'm like, oh my God, that was so long ago.
Long ago.
We see, these are the same cycles that folks like you and I have seen for years. It's like, we go through, like when mobile first came out, like you were saying, initially you didn't need a publisher to go on mobile. You could put it on iTunes directly for $500 as long as you had a Mac. And then it got to the point where, okay, yes, you have to have a publisher because otherwise you weren't going to stand out from the crowd. And we see these cycles come and go. And the fact that we're now in one with, community management and building these big online communities, and we're going back and we're referencing MySpace. That's like, I love it, but I feel old now. Yes.
I know. Well, we all know that things come in full circle. So it's just it's just the cycle coming back. And I'm sure it will happen again in 10, 15, 20 years.
So when developers are going in and they're creating these places, one of the concerns is always going to be, what if somebody gets in there and makes one for my game before I do? And, how are you working to prevent that and make sure that you've got, official sources from the developers themselves?
That's a great question. Okay. Yeah. To answer that, literally people just go to the site, splace.world, click create. They can fill in the space details or their place details. And then there's a point of verification. So it simply says, look, that's great. Thank you very much. We'll get back to you in a few hours' time. And that's when we do a little bit of digging to make sure that the email matches up. We check that that there's nothing weird going on. We're looking for an identity exactly as you're saying. And if we get that, we're quite happy to proceed. And then we'll hit the button. They receive further email instructions, and then they can upload all their graphics, and it goes live. So we do have a very light curation gate in order to stop what you're saying. And again, that's just for everyone's sake. Like I could make it a free-for-all, but I think it would be a mess in no time. So I think this light curation, just a few hours wait, is worth it because we can weed out any bad actors in this time.
Yeah, the fact that there's a level of moderation in there and it's not completely 100% free for all. Yes, you're right. That is extremely good. So if you're out there, you're listening, if you're on Discord, once again, now that we've discovered that there's a chat room inside the Discord, inside the voice option, if you got a question about communities or marketing, pop them in here and, we'll get them answered. So going back to the publishing aspect of it, aside from getting that community straight,
yes.
What is one of the things that indie devs, especially on mobile, need to be doing to prioritize marketing day one for their game?
I think they need to be, it's very, very hard being objective when you're making your own game, or, you're part of a small studio making a game. If you've invested loads of time and you're all on it together, it's very hard to step back and say, actually, my graphics could be a little bit better. Or, you know what, my whole level design, it sucks. it's actually really so difficult to step back. We've all done it. I've done it, and step back and say, actually, that's just not good enough. And at that time, if you can do that, then it's time to team up with someone better, maybe bring in, more a more skilled individual, or go to a publisher and say, hey, I've got this. What do you think? Can you evaluate it for me? Personally, I would tout it around all the publishers and then try and work out, what offer will you get? Will it be any kind of MG? I think, again, it depends how good the game is, how good your presentation is. It's the whole package. There's a whole X factor. Or you might get some very valuable feedback. Maybe two publishers that say, hey, you know what? You haven't got any sound, but really sound and music, it makes up half the game. And maybe you missed it. Maybe you got some very primitive sound effects. And, from that feedback alone, it's like going to a VC, use them as a sounding board. And if they say the same thing, more than two of them, that's definitely something that you need to fix. But, from the get-go in terms of marketing, I would say start building communities online. So as many places as possible, just start spinning things up. Yes, you may have to repurpose your videos, etc. But there's things like Canva, CapCut. There's all kinds of tools that will automate that process. But as long as you've got a steady trickle, you can start creating a fan base. So don't leave it too late. Don't leave it until the end, because many potential purchasers, they want to see the journey. They want to see how the art has evolved. They want to get a clip of a level. They want to see behind the scenes. That's what users want to see, because they become your fans. They become your advocates. So you want those on board as soon as possible. So when you've got the bare minimum, even if it's a concept on a piece of paper, I would say put it up there on social. Create Twitter, Reddit, create Splace. Just go for it from the beginning. But then at some stage, reach out to the publishers.
And there's so many. I mean, we talked about consolidation in the industry, and we did hit a point where there was a consolidation. Now it's like, we track 500 some publishers, and that
wow, really? Is that many? Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Well, but that's the thing. It's actually gone down in the last year. I think last year our list was somewhere between 600 and 700, and this year when we did, the list. And for those of you who don't know, you can just go to indiegame.business and download the list of publishers. So if you're pitching, there you go. But it had, I don't know that it was as much consolidation as it was people just going out of business.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because now we're sitting at between 500 to 600, but still the majority of those are mobile publishers. And that's what makes it so hard now for a lot of these teams to go out and pitch to everybody. The other aspect of it is so many of these publishers want the developer to be doing work that they're not set up to do. So you submit it and they're like, well, what's your churn rate? What's your, DAUs and MAUs? And if the stats aren't great, they're just like, oh no, we're not going to look at it. But it's like, that developer doesn't know how to do this. That's why they need a publisher.
Exactly. And actually that's something at Chillingo that we never, ever did. It was, we would always, decide to place a bet or not. So, if a game developer comes to us, and we would never say, well, how many DAUs? Because basically it's already a done deal. If it's already out there and they want us to take an existing game, that if they're doing that, it's already failed. So we'd simply say, well, no. So the best situation is the game's not out. We're part of the journey. The best publishers will have producers, lead producers, head producers, and they give you feedback. Like for Cut the Rope, we helped to polish that game over a 9-month period. It was a done deal. A lot of work went into it by Chillingo. So, I would say that my favorite publishers are ones that do that. They actually add value. It could be sound, graphics, level design, sounding board, good quality production staff. They can help you to polish what's a good product into an excellent product. And that makes all the difference. Really, if you can get your head above the water and get into the top 20, then you're going somewhere. But if you're not really there, then chances are just the big incumbents, the Clash of Clans, are just going to block you out. But still, there's still space for creativity, for invention, for really great original games. That option is still there. So there's always hope.
Do you think they should, especially because it is? I mean, it's if you get in the top 200 these days, you're getting somewhere because that top 20 is, good God, it's like completely run by 3 or 4 different publishers. It seems like, but do you think there's a better space for indie teams on the premium side or on the free to play side or a mix, or where does it fall?
I think if you're going to go free to play, you need your game mechanics, your economies, your multiple currencies, the whole analytics platform needs to be there. Or you found a publisher that's prepared to go the long haul and plug their platform into yours, into your game, and then you've got a chance. So if you do that, yes, you can go the freemium route, and then maybe you'll earn a lot of money. Maybe it'll be a hit. But I think if you haven't got that, you're not prepared to do it. Or a lot of developers that we found is they see, and I see it the same way, is games are art. So if you start slicing and dicing and dissecting games, that piece of art is lost. And so what I'm saying is, if you're prepared to stand by your guns, you have this amazing product that is a work of art, then we often found that the developers of those games just wanted it left intact, its integrity left as is. It's purely a one-off download that you paid for, and that was that, without any kind of pollution, without any kind of noise and power-ups and watch this ad and do this and do that. Now that, it takes a lot for a developer to come out and say it, but a lot of indies are actually like that. They stand by their guns because games are art.
It's so, I'm sitting here grinning like nobody's business because it's like I agree so wholeheartedly, but I think that's why we don't see a lot of indie teams in that free to play space right now. Is because it's like they feel like that art's been taken out of it because it's all based on statistics and KPIs and how many people are hitting the top of the funnel and getting through the funnel and all kinds of other stuff. From the early days at Shalingo, because y'all were getting everything moving at the same time, like Big Fish was doing stuff on the PC side before they moved to mobile, and all those games were originally premium too. Yeah. How have you seen that art? I mean, not talking about the graphics, but the art in the game design. How have you seen that evolve over the last 20 years from where we all started back there in the early iPhone days?
Well, I think it's the same story, really. Those very lucky indie developers that had, incredible artists, those games really stood out. So we launched one of the first twin stick shooter games called iDracula that had amazing art. And it was really just an arcade game. But people were like, wow, this is amazing. There must be a huge team making this. But the developer, a Russian developer, I think they were called More Games. I think they're still around, and iDracula persists on the PC. There's a new version. Their artist is so talented, but generally, the art, to answer your question, the art back then was usually quite primitive, and over time it's consolidated, and then again these indie teams are formed, they've joined forces, and then they become more powerful. They turn into the studios of the future. Actually, 11-Bit Games is another one. We published Anomaly. I think they probably learned a lot from us, and they turned into a publisher themselves. But their quality bar is absolutely incredible. They release some of the most outstanding games for mobile, for PC on Steam and console. So, the team that they've created now is really world class. It's AAA. But at the same time, people fresh out of college now could get together and say, let's make a gaming studio. I've got a great idea. I need an artist, I'll find an artist. I need a musician, I'll find them. That could be the next big game in the future. We just don't know. So, again, it always gives me great pleasure to say there's still hope to really create something amazing. And if you really want to, make a lot of money doing it. But I think you really have to love what you're doing the most. Don't just chase the dollars, because it doesn't tend to work that way.
I tell students all the time, if you think you're going to get into this industry and get rich, I have a whole, lecture for you, because that's not, yes, it will happen occasionally, but that's not what you have to absolutely,
you need to love
this industry. And going back to the cycles, so it's funny that you mentioned iDracula, because, you look at one of the biggest games last year with Vampire Survivors. that is basically a twin stick shooter, and the graphics aren't that fantastic. I mean, you could have dropped that game in the early 90s in something, and it would have fit. So we do see these cycles come along with the art, whether it's the art style or the design or anything else. Now, no offense to the Vampire Survivors, but they won that BAFTA award for best game design, and I was like,
oh, fantastic!
Wait, what? There's one of the most, I guess you could say it was a very tightly done game design because it's not fancy in any ways. You run around and you auto shoot. And you're right. That is one of those scenarios where you can say you can still get 2 or 3, 4 or 5 people together coming straight out of school and make something. It's a matter of taking that to the next level and getting it to be successful on the market. And that's where a lot of the challenge comes in too.
Exactly, that's it. And I think if you're talking to a publisher, just make sure that you don't give away any rights that you don't want to. So maybe if the game is really good, you're going to stand by it. Don't give away merchandising rights. Don't give away porting rights. Have a cap on the period that the game can be published for. Have some targets, some metrics. It's so easy to be brainwashed. So easy to think, yes, I've got somebody that really believe in my game, but actually the piece of paper they send you has got all kinds of pitfalls. And I'm always really wary about that. We try to be very fair and say, well, actually, you know what? It could be great, but there's a downfall. But actually, if you really want to do it, then I would like the Android rights. And I'll be explicit and ask, but there's a lot of things hidden in contracts these days.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I just finished recording our newest online class that is going to goes into detail on how to evaluate your publisher and your contract. And it talks about all of that stuff. So it's all very fresh in my head right now.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you never know where it's going to go. It may blow up. So you want to protect yourself and make sure you're in it for the long haul and things just don't get, taken away from you.
It's one of those things that I always warn developers about, but I see it happen all the time. And on one level, I get it. They get so excited because there is a publisher interested in their game, and they will sometimes tend to get tunnel vision at that point. It's like, okay, we have to do this deal, and you step back and you go, no, you really don't want to do that deal, and here's why. It's one of the hardest things for some of these developers to face because they've wanted their game to be successful. It's their baby. They've made it. Yeah. And they have to face the fact that maybe that publisher isn't the best fit for them, regardless of whether or not or how interested they appear to be.
Yeah, very true. I mean, at the very least, just get another opinion, at least one. Don't just go with the first one you see. Yeah, definitely. But still, it's an exciting time to be, in the gaming industry. Things continue to grow. The mobile market is vast. Everything is growing. So, it's a pretty good place.
So, what do you feel is one of the biggest warning signs when it comes to a publisher? Because it's like, yes, we list them all in that publisher list we have, but we do want you to go and do your own research. What's one of the biggest red flags that you've seen over the years when publishers are approaching indie devs?
I think it's very easy to get sucked in, as you said. And one of the big red flags would be, and of course there are many, would be if the publisher hands you the piece of paper and then says, you know what, I need an answer. We've got other games in the pipeline. I need an answer tomorrow, next week. Any kind of deadline, I'd say is a bad one, because the publisher should be prepared to sit back and actually have confidence that their offer stands up, to scrutiny, and that takes time for, especially an indie, to maybe talk to a lawyer, to discuss it with their family, with their team, with their studio. It could take a week. It could take more. So don't start badgering the indie and saying, I need an answer. And if somebody does that, I'd be super, super wary. I'm not saying every time it's going to be a disaster, but just be aware of those, pressurized boiler situations where you go, oh my God, I have to make a decision. Yeah, because you could make the wrong decision. So just be careful.
And we've seen, one would think that with all the digitalization of, with online conferences, and we've literally got better access to publishers and developers than we've ever had between Twitter and Discord and everything else. You would think that it would be quicker to get these deals done, but since the pandemic, we've actually seen it takes 4 months on average.
Really? Wow.
From the time that a developer sends, a good demo, a demo that the publisher is actually going to be able to review, to the time it gets actually signed on paper, it can take easily 4 months. Ironically, it's actually quicker sometimes to get VC investment than it is to get a publisher. Yeah. But part of it is because publishers are seeing 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 games a year, and so it's a matter of sorting through all of that. But yeah, you're right. When somebody comes in and goes, take it or leave it, here it is, I need an answer in 2 or 3 days, that's always a big
yeah, I'd say probably run to the hills. I mean, I would probably vet between 10 and 30 games a day. Initially, when we started out, I was going outbound. I was looking for games. I was searching forums. I was ringing people. I even wrote letters when I couldn't find their phone numbers. So I was really persistent, and I would set the alarm clock and wake up at 3 a.m. just to sync up with some Australians, etc. But it needed to be done. But slowly over time, we found that Chillingo had more of a gravitational mass, and then people started coming to us. And when that happened, really at its height, there was so many games. But I would do my best, at the very least, to write a good email back to say, you know what, this is just not ready for any kind of publisher yet. I think do this, and this, some boiler points, and send it back. So I would say hundreds of email threads backwards and forwards going on all the time. And some developers would send me 2 or 3 games over 3 years. And then on the 4th game, after all this feedback, I wouldn't charge anything for it. I'd just be giving feedback. The 4th game, I'd be like, holy shit, this is great. I love this. But because I'd been prepared to invest time previously, the developer would say, I really want to go with you. I trust you. Send me the contract, leave them with it. Invariably, 99% of the time, they would say yes to it. But that was built on building a relationship. Absolutely. And I know it worked that way because I did it all the time.
So for better or worse, you hit on 2 points in that are still very true. One, yes, this is all about the relationships. And that, going and responding back to those developers. I just had a woman I talked to yesterday, and she sent me an email out of the blue this week, and she's like, I'm just trying to get some feedback on how to start a development studio, and everyone is ignoring me because they don't think I'm serious. And I'm like, let's talk. We ended up chatting for an hour. But the fact that you had to write letters to developers that you couldn't figure out how to get a hold of. So we do a lot of, on the consulting side, we do a lot of scouting for publishers and developers. I am sad to say that is still very much the case. That is one of the biggest frustrations is when you find that game online or wherever you saw it and you can't figure out how to get in touch. We have all these communication platforms now, and some developers, they don't have an email address. They don't have, the DMs open on Twitter or whatever it may be. And it's one of the key reasons when we go and we talk to publishers about scouting for them, and they're like, I can't get a hold of the development. Like, we'll take care of that part. We've been hunting people down in this industry for 25 years. It's like, we can handle that aspect of it. But that part really hasn't changed that much, but it is the relationship aspect of it. That is so important. And so as a developer, when you're first getting started, what do you think are some of the do's and don'ts of building some of those relationships without completely just harassing the shit out of people in the industry too?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, first of all, just be reasonable. Don't just create a very simple demo that's following some kind of like Unity guide, and you've recreated it and then send it to a publisher, because it is wasting their time. And then the second time they may not look at any of your stuff because they might think, oh, it's that same guy, that same girl, and it's just another demo. that they've taken online. But so at least create a minimum quality bar that at least you're happy with. But once you've done that, then I think it's okay to send out to a publisher, and then be very matter of fact, because everyone receives so many emails every day. What a publisher does not want to read is 3 pages of text that you have to pick through. So just bullet points. Say, I'm enclosing my game. I'm from Portugal. I've been building games for 2 years, or not at all. This is my first game. I'd really appreciate some feedback. It works. You need to use it on a test flight to try it. I'll send you a copy. Here's a video, and here's the main bullet points. So again, like you're contacting some kind of fund, just keep it down to the bullet points. So you might say, I've done 1 level. I need to do better art. I need to source better graphics. I need to find a musician, etc., etc. So have the pluses and have the negatives, which is the things that you're going to build. And then at least you've sent it out. And actually, what's really satisfying is, down the line, if you hear nothing back, that publisher, that person reaching out to you to say, hey, really, really well done on that game. I'm really sorry that I never followed up. That's a really good feeling, because you did everything you could to engage them. And actually, they didn't get back to you. So you can easily maintain that list. And yeah, by all means, they should download the list from you guys, and just, you don't need to hit all 500 with the same email. Just cherry pick, say 20. Stick with 20 where you like the look of the names and you've read the quick bio and you think, yeah, that's for me. Just start with those 20, send them a few emails and see where it goes. You don't need to go crazy. You can always move on to the next 20, in the next iteration, but just see what comes back.
And we've got a related question here from Jonathan on LinkedIn. Isn't it important to also address the unfortunate truth that lots of first-time developers have almost no chance to get a publisher interested? Building a portfolio of successful projects seems high value.
Well, without a doubt, if a developer were to ping me and say, hey, we've created 2 hit games before, would you like to see our next game? I'd be like, hey, yeah, by all means. I would hold the coffee that morning and dive straight into the game. But it doesn't mean to say that I would ignore another game from a back bedroom first game developer. It simply isn't that way. I admit you're going to move up the queue without doubt. But that's just human nature. I think that's unavoidable. So having a portfolio, yes, it adds a lot. And actually, if you're a lone developer, you can also send your CV with even artwork from college. I've employed people, graphic designers, where it's simply hung on their portfolio from effectively what's a higher education school. But if you're prepared to take a bet, then with some tuition, with some guidance, they turn into great artists as well. So people will give you a chance. You just need to reach out and also have that positive mindset.
The positive mindset is the hard part many days in this industry.
It can get hard. I agree, but you have to maintain it day on day. And, it's a whole secret thing. Don't start thinking, I don't want this. Just think what you do want, and really just see it every day.
I agree. It's not impossible we look at a lot of first time developer things. Yes, it is much easier if you've had a hit, but even if your first game never got seen by anybody and it's something that was on itch.io, don't discredit how valuable that is, because it's that getting the game to a point where it's actually finished and shippable. That last 5-10% that is so important that so many developers don't make it that way. If you've published anything, you're ahead of a lot of developers in the industry, whether it was successful or not. It's simply showing the fact that I can actually get a game done.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, shipping is a really big deal. And most developers, they don't usually attain that status. It's hard to do. I mean, shipping a game is so complex on every level, especially if you're a one-man band or a small team. It really takes all the energy out of you. But everyone is seeing the end of the rainbow in the distance, and that's what we're all striving for. Trying to create something great that you believe in.
And having fun while you do it, because that's the other thing. The day that you get up to work in this industry and you're not enjoying it anymore, go work somewhere where you get a real paycheck, because that's the big difference. It's very much a passion-fueled industry. So, all right,
that is right.
We're wrapping up here. Give us the big plug on Splace. Tell everybody where to go, and we'll get everybody signed up, and we'll be going on and making new and wonderful communities.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I implore all you indie devs out there, studios, gaming companies, go to splace.world, simply create a profile. You've got access immediately to your own profile that you can configure, that only you can post into, or you could put posts inside any number of public spaces. And if you don't see the space you want, just click on create and we'll make it for you. So it's super easy. It's something there for everybody, and it's highly configurable. There's lots of benefits. And don't forget, if you have a gaming world map, you can email that to me and we'll integrate it inside your space as well. So your users can geolocate onto your gaming world. It's really cool. It's something you should try.
I'm tempted to put Ash up here full screen because she's got the cat in the screen with her here. So I'm not going to do that, Ash. I'm not going to thrust you into the limelight. But everybody, Chris, thank you. It's awesome. We're very excited about this, and we're going to put a space up there as well. And so I'm going to probably put Ash on that because we're gone for 3 weeks. I'm going to be on vacation, plus I'll be at Indigo or First Playable. So if you'll be at either one of those conferences, stop by, give me a wave, say hi, and then we'll be back. And I think that's it for today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.